Hi. First, let me tell you that I've got bronchitis, so I might cough or have to clear my throat or take a drink of iced tea, so I apologize for the scratchy voice. So let's talk about this last unit, which is the persuasive essay. Now, because I pretty much missed a week helping my family emergency, I just don't feel like we have enough time to do the research paper. So instead, we're going to do a proposal and an annotated bibliography. These are two steps that you would do in Comp 2 to prepare to write a persuasive essay. And so if you take my Comp 2, you would be able to use what you're doing in this unit for that paper if you choose to. But again, those are things that don't take as long. They don't take as long to grade. And so I decided to help you with those steps that will make it easier to write those research papers. So here is the week that we're in. And the first step is understanding what assignment you're trying to fulfill so that you know the kind of topic to write about. So again, remember, we're not writing this paper, but you need the information from this paper to get it, right? So if we look at that assignment, you're going to see that you're going to go to that TED Talk page, look around and choose a topic that is inspired by something that you saw. Now, that doesn't mean you have to write specifically about something in the TED Talk, but you have to be able to tell me how the TED Talk that you looked at led to the topic that you ended up choosing. And the example that I gave you is a really good example about something that was inspired by a TED Talk, but doesn't really talk about specifically what was in the TED Talk, okay? So you're going to choose a debate. Now, sometimes those talks are more informative than anything, so you're going to have to find the debate within there. So that's why you're choosing two, because maybe one isn't as debatable as another. Some topics are, a little bit more difficult to answer, and so I might, push you in one direction over the other. But you are going to take a side, and you're going to have a 3-point thesis, right? And so here are some guidelines for the topics. You want to avoid overused or cliched topics, and I've just given you a sample of those. One that has been coming up in some of my day classes that is also here is like violent video games. Again, those are over argued by people who are not experts in the field, and there is no clear answer to whether violent video games make people more violent or make children more violent. The research just doesn't show us clearly one way or the other. And so I tell students, don't write about that. Write about something, if you're interested in violence in children or whatever, write about something that actually isn't so, in-depth and nuanced, right? But the problem with a lot of these topics are, first of all, people know something about most of them, but they don't know enough really to make an informed opinion about. People are oftentimes very judgy or feel very strong about these topics, and that doesn't make it easy sometimes to write an academic way about them. If your views on any of these issues are based on your own personal values, whether that's political or religious or ethical, then that isn't necessarily enough reason to tell other people what they should do or think about that, right? So again, we have to follow the laws of the land. So if we have freedom of religion, so to speak, you can't then say everybody should do something just because your particular faith says that's the right way to do it. You would have to find reasons beyond faith, because faith is not fact, right? It's faith. And so this is what oftentimes gets in the way of like abortion and death penalty and anything that's religious in nature, right? It's just hard to separate those two. And if you're not an experienced writer, it can be very difficult to understand then how do I argue logically for my case if I don't use my personal values, right? And so again, I just, stay away from those topics. It's just going to make it hard. I mean, I would hardly even want to write about most of these things, right? Excuse me. Avoid topics that require personal stories or evidence from your own life. You're not allowed to use personal experience in here. But that doesn't mean that personal experience can't have an impact on what you choose, right? If it has happened to you, then you may want to know, well, has my experience been unique, or do I have an argument to make because of my personal experience, but I can find research that actually I can use instead of that, right? So if it happened to you and you really want to insert like an anecdote from someone's point of view, you can't use yourself, but you may be able to go out and find some research that has shared somebody's Excuse me. So let's say you're interested in writing about road rage because it happened to you. You can't use your experience in the essay, but you can go find someone else's experience that has been published and is verifiable, and you can use that instead. Excuse me. Avoid topics that are too technical. Again, you can't become an expert on it, so you want to at least choose something that you can get enough comfortable with and that you already know a lot about, so that it's not just so new that you're citing too much and you're not actually writing anything yourself. Avoid things that would require too much in-depth research for the same reason. Consider assignment length.